Hey guys, welcome to today's video. So I'm really trying my best to make this a series like I've said with my other mental health and makeup video. For today, I want to talk about addiction because I think it's a super important topic that needs to be discussed more often. And unfortunately, like I've said before, with all the strides that we've taken in reducing the stigma around mental health and other issues that fall within that same vein, there's still so much work that needs to be done in reducing that stigma because it's still very prevalent. And I've definitely heard people say with addiction, like that's their own damn fault, like they should have never touched the drugs, or I have no sympathy for people who use those substances. And when it comes to this issue as a whole, that is such a superficial mindset to have. And most of the time with addiction, there's so many layers to it and so much that needs to be addressed besides treating just a substance use disorder. So I really wanted to talk more in depth about it. I just want to preface that issues like this are very individualized and very personal. And there is no one size fits all guidebook on recovering from addiction. Everyone's story is different. Everyone is dealing with different intensities of substance use disorder, and everyone has their own traumatic events, upbringings, experiences that overall do alter the course of their substance misuse overall and their recovery. I by no means am the addiction expert, but having worked as a mental health nurse and dealing with patients who come in for overdoses, and also throughout my clinicals in school, like I did multiple rotations at detox facilities and rehab centers. I've had quite a fair share of experiences talking to people who are dealing with addiction and also talking to people who are recovering. So before I ramble on any further, because Lord knows I can definitely do that, let me zip my lips and let's get started with the actual video. First things first, what do we think of the top? I just got it like 2 days ago. I think it's so cute, but also casual, which is like perfect for my vibe, you know what I'm saying? But it is long sleeve. I got them rolled up. So hopefully I don't turn into a puddle while filming this video because my air conditioning is on. It makes a lot of noise. So she is off for the moment and I may suffer because of it, but that's okay. So let's talk about addiction. For this video, I don't want to delve too deeply into my personal story with addiction or anyone else's as well. Over the course of my career and throughout school, like with clinicals and stuff, I've definitely talked to quite a handful of people who have struggled with substance use disorder. Everyone's story is different, right? We're all different individuals. We all have different upbringings, experiences, stuff like that. So I don't find it's super duper helpful to delve into any particular story, but generally speaking, there is potential for a lot of overlap and common themes amongst addiction, and I think that's what I really want to delve into for this video, hopefully, if my mind stays on track. I do feel like I want to share a little bit about my personal struggles with addiction, and I don't want to diagnose myself and say I had like a full-blown like substance use disorder, and of course it's a spectrum, right? There's varying levels of substance use disorder. It can be mild, it can be moderate, it can be severe. Once again, kind of going into the line of like everyone's story is different, right? Just full transparency, because I think that kind of honesty and vulnerability is super important when talking about these issues. I'll talk more about it later, but about kind of accountability when it comes to taking ownership of your addiction or substance use. Pardon my hair, it's gonna look a little not cute for probably the rest of me doing my makeup, but I don't need any foundation in my hair because you don't need it. So just a little bit of context, I went to an Ivy League school and I had quite a few connections with people who went to not necessarily like Ivy League level, but also like higher tier schools or more selective schools, whatever you want to call them. And someone introduced me to a drug called modafinil or armodafinil. What those medications are central nervous system stimulants that basically like keep you awake and alert. And they're typically used to treat people who have like daytime sleepiness disorder or narcolepsy. I was introduced to it by a friend who used it to help them with all-nighters and stuff like that. Just like for the sake of being transparent, there's just, especially with these higher tier schools, a lot of drug use. For one, because sometimes people feel like they're dependent on drugs to elevate them to a state of mind where their stress is diminished or goes away. And I have seen a lot of people throughout the course of college take like Adderall and stuff like that to help them study, and kind of in the same vein of like pulling all-nighters, kind of in the hopes of being like a better student, right? Modafinil and armodafinil are not typically seen as addictive drugs, but the thing about addiction is anything can be addictive. It's all a matter of how you use that particular thing and how it impacts your life. For example, people don't typically think of weed as addictive, right? Which is why I think it's use is growing in popularity. Like people think it's like a safer alternative to like alcohol, which I do believe that for sure. But there's still definitely potential to be addicted to it in some capacity. And if you watch like the TLC show, My 600-Pound Life, a lot of those people are addicted to food because it was like a drug that kind of elevated them to a state of mind that they felt better in overall. For me personally, I don't want to diagnose myself and say I had like a full-blown addiction or substance use disorder, but in some capacity, I felt dependent on armodafinil and modafinil because I'm sure a lot of people who went to a competitive school can recognize this, but the environment is very competitive to say the least. Being surrounded by a bunch of smart people, you feel a lot of pressure to kind of keep up some way, kind of feel like you need to justify going to such a top tier school. For just people in life, like college students where their career is on the line, that is a lot of pressure. Personally, I had a lot of insecurities about going to this type of school. I had an insecurity about not being good enough. I had insecurities about not deserving to go there as well, which looking back on it, I totally deserved it, and I worked so hard for everything that I have in my life up to this point. And, you know, looking back on it now as I've settled into my career and stuff like that, it's easy to say like, why did I think like that? But you know, there was just a lot of uncertainty, and I was in the middle of college and I didn't have like a job offer waiting for me when I graduated. So there was just a lot of uncertainty overall. And I think a lot of us have fears of the unknown, which is totally valid. Simply put, I just feel like I wasn't enough. And these drugs like modafinil, armodafinil helped me, you know, stay awake longer to study and also improve my focus. At the same time, it was at the expense of my health because it suppresses your appetite. Your sleep quality is impaired. Sometimes you don't even sleep because it is, like I said, used to treat sleep disorders. It made you feel like crap and anxious too. Even though I felt like it was helping me be a better student, overall it was very detrimental to my health and kind of was a way for me to kind of escape my self-worth, like thinking that I was just better overall with the help of this drug when really that was not the case. Forget the studying, forget being a student, like I was losing a lot of weight. Like I said, I wasn't really eating because I didn't have an appetite, and it would keep me up at night sometimes, and when I would wake up the next day, I would just feel like total crap. I don't want to diagnose myself, but addictive tendencies of feeling like I was better on the drug and that I needed it to accomplish or achieve something were definitely there in substance use. That is often a common occurring theme. People feel like they need the drug to be a better version of themselves. And in their mind, they feel like they need this drug to accomplish things socially, productively, within all those different realms. And as a result, they kind of just feel like they need that drug moving forward because it's almost become part of their identity. You know, throughout my time in clinicals and talking to people who, you know, are actively struggling with addiction and trying to recover from it, they often describe drugs being like their best friend and becoming a part of them. And that's why addiction can be so difficult to overcome, is because, especially if you've been misusing substances for a longer period of time, it almost becomes personified within you and you almost forget who you were without the drugs. And I think when someone's been dependent in some way on a substance for so long, they're fearful of the person they may become when they aren't actively using it. When it comes to drug use, it can become an integral part of someone's everyday routine that they're just accustomed to on a day-by-day basis. And I think that's why it's really important for people to take a step back and kind of look in the mirror and be like, how are my current actions affecting my day-to-day life? And are they gonna be better for me in the long run? And with drug use, it really never is. I think there's this idea that drug use is strictly behavioral. I can't speak for everyone, and I think behavioral health does play a key role in substance use. It's important to recognize that there are definitely physiological changes that happen when you use substances, especially over a long period of time. I don't want to delve too deeply into the scientifics of it, and I probably wouldn't be the best at explaining it anyway. When it comes to addiction, your reward system becomes altered, and there's so many like neurotransmitters and chemicals and hormones that are at play, but essentially your brain becomes wired into depending on the drugs you're using to elevate yourself to a state of mind where you are happier and more content. And joy is such, like living happy and being joyous is such an integral part of life. Like, what is life without its moments of joy? And for some people, drugs are that source of joy. Hey, this is Tim from the future, laying down in bed with my double chin editing this video. I just wanted to add too that oftentimes these people who struggle with substance use disorder don't have the support system or familial support that we often take for granted in our day-to-day life. So when you take into consideration like our natural happy hormones and stuff like that, it becomes totally haywire. Your brain produces less of these natural happy hormones and actively seeks out that drug to bring the happiness back. And I feel like it should be no surprise too that a lot of people who struggle with addiction tend to have not so happy stories. They've had trouble upbringings, a lot of trauma in their life. There's even been people I've talked to where their parents got them hooked onto drugs and they would use drugs recreationally with their parents. To me, that is so sad because we think of parents as people who should be setting the example for us, who should be teaching us healthy strategies to overcome adversity. But to teach your young child to snort cocaine, do heroin, you are setting your child up for potentially a lifetime of struggle because, like I said, the brain changes with addiction, which makes it so hard to overcome. Just like how people would, crave water, crave food, people then start to crave drugs, almost like it's an inherent natural thing. I think at the same time, it's important to recognize that addiction does not discriminate. Anyone can get addicted. It's not just people who have had a tough upbringing. It's not just people who have had a plethora of traumatic experiences. Literally anyone can become addicted to drugs. People who come from happy families, people who think, oh, I'm never going to be addicted to drugs. Unless you're 100% adamant on never touching drugs and you never do, not one single person is safe from developing a substance use disorder. And I think that's where a lot of the stigma surrounding substance misuse comes from. I think people kind of have a superficial mentality like, oh, you're addicted to drugs and just stop using them. And as are many things in life, that is so much easier said than done, especially when there's actual brain chemistry changes going on. It's just much easier for someone outward looking in to say the things that you think would be beneficial for someone's health, but you can never really be certain how difficult it is to overcome a particular situation or disorder unless you've actually lived it out yourself. Have not delved into this for a minute, but this is just genuinely the best eyeshadow palette of like all time. And I'm so sad because this shade, it's very soft, which I can appreciate on my eyelids, but it came out of the pan and just kind of splattered all over the rest of the palette. Yeah, just generally speaking, as I've said in my previous mental health and makeup video, is even though there's been so many great strides against the stigma surrounding mental health, there's still so much work that we need to do. And I've seen like videos of people talking about like depression, for example, and being like, you're not sad, you're just lazy. As a result, it minimizes the struggles that these people go through. Having gone to detox facilities as part of my psychiatric and community clinical, which I chose, and I've talked to many people who are actively trying to fight their addiction and overcome it. I have so much respect for those people. And I've seen the way that people who have substance use disorder are treated in some of these facilities during like a little therapy session, like a therapy group session to people who struggle with addiction. We're getting into a fight. The therapist literally asked me, whose side are you on? And that just like completely disgusted me, because as a therapist working with these types of people, is your responsibility to put out these situations and help people come to a more rational, logical thinking state of mind instead of like picking sides like it's a fucking middle school fight, you know what I'm saying? And just trying to put myself in the shoes of those who work with people who struggle with addiction. I'm sure it can be exhausting and difficult in its own right. Like, I'm not trying to diminish their struggles as well. Like, addiction recovery is not always linear. There's a lot of bumps in the road that people might face. There's always the potential for relapse. And yes, superficially we can try our best to treat the addiction right, but on a more deeper level, because everyone's story is different, are we really treating the root of the addiction? People who struggle with addiction are living in a very, very harsh reality, in that substance use helps them escape it or takes them to an altered state of mind that makes living more bearable. And yes, going back to like talking with people who struggle with substance misuse and have a chemical dependence to it, a lot of them say that they're in recovery for the sake of another loved one, whether that be a partner or a child. I 100% respect that and think it's important to find motivation to go through with such a painstaking process, because like I said, recovering from addiction is not easy, and there's so many steps to it. At the same time, I think it's also important for these people to do it for themselves. Like, recovering from substance use disorder should be something that you want for yourself, regardless of being motivated for a family member or something like that, because it's your life that you're living, you know what I'm saying? And yes, those people can be a part of your life, but at the end of the day, who lives in your body? Who makes your decisions? Who dictates the type of lifestyle that you live? Who is the person in your body fighting for survival? It's you. And within that same vein, it is really important to take accountability and ownership of your addiction. Even though it may not entirely be your fault that you got addicted in the first place, because like I said, sometimes these parents just feed their kids drugs. Can't hop in the time machine and go back to a time where there's an integral turning point and you could just change the course of whatever happened. Like, I wish we could, but you have to honor where you're at. And part of honoring where you're at is taking ownership of the reality that you're facing. And that entails taking ownership of your addiction. Things that are not healthy for us can get the better of us. And when living like this has been your reality for so long, it's hard to envision a life without it. I just want to say to those who are struggling with addiction that no matter what your mind tells you, because the voices in our head can be so loud and our brain can really get the better of us, life is worth living without drugs. Part of living life to the fullest is not taking anything for granted. When you're in this altered state of mind, it's really easy to miss the little things that have the potential to make us happy. Depending on drugs is not a sustainable lifestyle. Relationships get compromised, your health gets compromised, and your overall livelihood gets compromised. Sure, you could argue that it brings you this happiness in an instant, and in the end, you're only damaging yourself in the long run and potentially damaging others who are important in your life in the process. When you're deep into addiction, those unfortunate realities have already occurred, and it happens. I feel like the next step after that is to focus on becoming a better you and proving to yourself that I am better than that version of me in the past. And I can prove it to myself that I am worthy of a happy and healthy life without depending on drugs for it, which is so much easier said than done, right? But it's that kind of mindset that can then help you forge a new path of being clean. And it's never an easy road, and there could be relapses and there could be setbacks. But it can be done, and we all deserve to be able to rely on ourselves to be our best friend rather than our worst enemy. All right, I'm gonna throw in some lashes real quick. This is usually a painstakingly long process because I'm horrible at false lashes. So I think this is as good as the lashes are going to get. And it's not too bad, I think, unless I'm like Delulu. But you know, this will do. Unfortunately, I think for a lot of people who still deal with substance use disorder at an advanced age, have been dealing with it for a lot of their life, they feel like it's an impossible cause or it's just too late for them to make a recovery. And the good news is that couldn't be farther from the truth. Okay, this is so random. I usually don't wear lipstick, but this color is perfect for this look. It just got really dark all of a sudden, and I love that. I am such a night owl. This summer, there's like an entire week where I was like staying up until like 5 a.m. And if you're a night shift nurse, that can be a great thing, but in terms of like living your everyday life, no. Piggybacking off of what I just said, I know a registered nurse that worked at one of these rehab facilities, and she struggled with addiction for a large portion of her life. Around the age of 50, she made the initiative to try to recover from her disorder, and she was successful in doing so, and then went to nursing school and found this position. And she's a total inspiration. Like, I respect her so much, and kind of just goes to show that even if you've been struggling with addiction for such a long period of time, and that's really kind of all you know, it's never too late to make that big positive change for yourself. It's not going to be easy, but the outcomes are well worth it and can change your life forever. You can use what you learned through your own recovery and share that wealth of knowledge with others, because it is so powerful. And that's really the thing that I think is really important not to overlook with mental health as a whole, but especially drug use, is we kind of think of it as like this completely negative thing, right? And it definitely can have very negative, life-altering consequences. But when we look at the stories of these recovered addicts, what they've been through to get to this point, there are so many valuable lessons to be learned from those stories. And And having gone through more of a unique experience and struggle, they are able to empathize more with this growing population of people who are struggling with addiction. You know, we have the opioid epidemic here and the xylazine situation where people were literally injecting like horse tranquilizer into their body parts. Those recovered people have a power that no one can take away from them. And with their experiences, they have the potential to empower this whole group of people who deserve a better life and deserve to make better changes for themselves. Regardless of whatever mistakes you've made or choices you've made, they're in the past. And all you can really do is make the most of your present and set yourself up for a healthier, happier future. All right, now that I just preached that, it's time to set my face and call it a day with this makeup look. A little bit of Urban Decay all-nighter. I used this like back in my transforming myself into a girl makeup tutorial, and I kind of fell off with it. I like started using other setting sprays like MAC Fix Plus, this like firming, plumping peptide spray by Beauty Blender. But this, it's like a makeup cult favorite for good reason. Also, I'm planning on filming another video after this, so I want my makeup to last throughout it because it's gonna be fun. I hope you guys will stick along for it because I have a lot of fun and creative video ideas that I think will make enjoyable content for someone out there. And I really want to just make people happy. And I also want to make myself happy because this is something that has brought me joy in the past. And I thoroughly enjoyed, you know, being creative and talking about things that I'm passionate about and sharing my knowledge with other people in hopes of bettering them. And with all of my videos, I want to emphasize that there is no guidebook to life. There's advice that we can share, there's suggestions that we can give, there's recommendations that we can put out there, but everyone's story is different and certain things work better for other people. You take what you feel is applicable to your situation and give it a try. I'm not always going to be 100% correct with everything I say, and for something that is so subjective, I don't even know if there is such a thing, but I'm still learning to, like, working as like a mental health nurse, I've learned so much and I still continue to learn. That's a really great thing about interacting with other people is you can learn their stories and learn about their unique experiences and how that has impacted them so that you can consequently gather a more broader wealth of information to then share to other people in hopes of helping them. But I'm 100% willing to learn, and if there's anyone out there that has any advice that they want to share or disagree with me, I'm totally okay with that. Like, let's have that nuanced discussion because there's a lot of nuances with these topics. Add a little final touches to my makeup look. All set. Okay, we can fix my hair if I can. I just washed my hair today, and you know, I'm happy to get all the oils and grease, if you want to call it, out of my hair, but it does tend to be a little bit more difficult to style. It ain't gonna be perfect, and I don't really have anyone I need to impress but my boyfriend, but no, I need to impress myself. Okay, to anyone who's watching this and has made it this far, thank you so much for watching and spending your precious time with me. I truly appreciate anyone who takes the time to watch my content because I don't expect anyone really to. I know I have a history of being inconsistent with my posts, which I totally take full accountability for. I'm sure I'll say this in another video, like, this is something that has brought me joy and I'm passionate about, and if I don't commit myself to my passions, I almost in a way feel like I'm giving up on myself. So I'm gonna work really hard to be consistent, especially now I have some time off after my injury, really bring forth like the best of me. So I hope that you guys will subscribe and stick around to go on this journey with me. And with that being said, take good care of yourselves and be well.